Welcome to Adult Storytime. I'm E.R.A, and tonight we're going to be reading Chapter 7 from my book, The Clinic. In Chapter 7, we're seeing the way that the WPO rule is separating families and terrorizing them. Let's get started. Chapter 7, The Only Way to Save Them. However many holy words you read, however many you speak, what good will they do if you do not act upon them? Buddha Shakyamuni. Tony was worried about Maria. She and Alma hadn't been at school in over a week. Maybe Alma was hospitalized again. She had been many times over the years, but Maria usually came to school, then went back to the hospital afterwards, spending her nights in Alma's hospital room, sometimes forgoing showers and meals to stay close to her sister. Maria was generous and caring, which is why Tony already loved her so dearly. He planned to marry her someday, he had no doubts. Tony! His father was staring at him from across the dinner table. Son, are you going to answer me? I'm sorry, Dad, I didn't hear you. I was thinking about Maria. She still hasn't been to school. I don't know what to do. Maybe you should call her father. Let him know you're worried about her and Maria. Yeah, I guess so. Maria's father doesn't want her to have a boyfriend, but I guess I could call as a friend. Of course you can, his mother chimed in. You're in love, how cute, his little sister Lizette giggled with her hazel eyes sparkling. His younger brothers Sergio and baby Javier were laughing as well. He would be embarrassed if it weren't true. He did love Maria, so he had nothing to reply. May I be excused then? I'd like to call now while it's still early. But you haven't finished your dinner, it's your favorite. His mother worried when his plate held enchiladas and wasn't quickly emptied. I'm not hungry right now. Save the enchiladas for me and I'll have them with eggs in the morning. Okay, mijo, go ahead and check on Maria, his mother said with an understanding smile. Tony went to his room and called Maria's house. The phone rang and rang with no answer. He tried her father's mobile phone next and didn't get an answer on that number either. He tried Maria's mobile and she still wasn't answering. He decided it was early enough to ride his bike to her house. It would only take 10 minutes if he pedaled hard. Dad, no one answered. I'm going to ride my bike over and check on them. I'll be home in less than an hour and I have my phone with me. Tony called over his shoulder as he headed out the back door. Okay, son, it's a school night. Make sure you're on time getting home. Tony heard his father answer as he went down the steps. He mounted his bright red mountain bike and pumped hard. The wind rushed through his dark hair as he sped down the driveway quickly, making his golden brown eyes water. As he raced through the suburban streets, he noticed few of his neighbors were outside. Even though things were pretty stable now, the leveling changed how people felt about one another and the way they socialized. Everyone had tight-knit groups that were wary of anyone from outside them. Tony remembered being small and playing on scooters in the street with the neighborhood kids. It almost seemed like a dream. In the new world, children were possessions locked away tightly from the rest of the world. His family was better than most, but fear and greed ruled the hearts of WPO citizens, crippling their ability to let their children thrive away from them. Most were afraid of the risk to their children, but others were afraid the children might see past the WPO shackles and try to break free. He arrived at Maria's house more quickly than he expected. Her father's vehicle was parked outside. It was a dark blue truck with enormous angel wings painted down the sides. Maria had created the artwork on her father's vehicle so they would remember her mother every time they went for a drive. Her mother was in heaven with the angels now and adored angels when she was living. Tony went to the side of the house and spotted a light on in the kitchen. He suddenly felt terrified and almost left. But the malignant vibrations that emanated out of the house made him fear for Maria even more. Tony approached the door with trepidation, fighting his own flight response and moving forward. He lifted his hand to knock, and the door swung open. Tony was so afraid he couldn't focus enough to recognize the dark shadow before him. What do you want? Maria's father was scowling and looked both panicked and resolved at the same time, like a beast before it chews off its own leg to get free of a trap. Hello, Mr. Garcia. Maria tutors me at school sometimes. She and Alma are my friends. I haven't heard from them in almost 2 weeks. I've been worried and I keep calling, but no one answers." Mr. Garcia stared hard at Tony, like he was examining a new type of insect found unexpectedly. Then his face crumpled, and he started to cry. Tony had no idea what to do. He had never seen a grown man sob uncontrollably before. Tony felt tears heating his own eyes. What could have happened? "Alma is gone. My baby is gone. Maria will be following her soon. I can't get her out of bed. She won't eat or speak. She just holds Alma's old toy and cries. God, what have I done?" "I'll be right back, Mr. Garcia. Give me a minute." Maria's father looked through Tony like he wasn't there, then closed the door again. Tony sat down on the porch steps and called his father. "Hola, Tony," his father answered cheerily. "Dad, something terrible has happened to the Garcias. We need to help them. Mr. Garcia is crying and he said Alma is gone and Maria is next. Please come help them." Tony pleaded softly. He didn't want the neighbors to hear and cause trouble for Mr. Garcia. "Antonio, Mr. Garcia works at the clinic. If something bad is happening with his family, we should stay out of it and let the WPO handle it. It's not our place, son." "It is our place. Maria is my love and a wonderful person. If she's in trouble, we have to help her. Even if she was a stranger, we should help them. It's the right thing to do. Why read the Bible if you're not going to live the way it tells you to?" "Okay, mijo, you're right. When did you become this wise? I'll be over soon. Wait for me to get there before you bother them again." "Okay," Tony replied. He watched the night shadows lengthen across the streets and wondered what was taking his father so long to arrive. When his father finally pulled into the Garcia's drive, Tony was surprised to see his mother in the car as well. She rushed out of the vehicle as soon as it stopped, ran over and embraced Tony. "Don't worry, we're going to help your friends if we can. I had Hominy Kim come to the house and stay the night. The kids love her so much. They weren't even worried about us leaving. She brought her granddaughter Bale with her. We can stay as long as we need to help the Garcias." She pulled Tony to his feet and into a hug. His father walked past them and knocked on the door. They could hear Mr. Garcia sobbing loudly inside the house. Tony's father knocked again, much louder and longer this time. The crying stopped, and they heard Mr. Garcia approaching the door. When he opened it, he looked at Tony's father fearfully, then noticed Tony's mother and relaxed. She took the cue. "Hello, Mr. Garcia. I'm Antonio's mother, Angelica, and this is my husband, George. Tony told us that you and the girls need some help. May we come in?" "All right. I don't think anyone can help us now, but go ahead and come in," Mr. Garcia replied as he moved out of the doorway. Tony followed his mother and father inside. The house smelled dreadful, as if things were decomposing and growing mold inside of the walls around them. Dishes were stacked in the kitchen sink, full of rotting food, and the trash overflowed onto the floor. "Where are the girls, Mr. Garcia?" Tony's mother asked, looking around the house and sizing up where she planned to start. He recognized her determined expression. His mother would never leave the Garcias to live in these conditions. "Alma is gone. They are going to terminate her because I can't afford her lung transplant. The cost of her care is so expensive I don't have anything left to save for the operation. WPO Child Services is saying that I'm abusing Alma by making her live with an illness. They think Maria suffers because of her sister's sickness and that it is detrimental to Alma's quality of life. They believe terminating Alma is a kindness. Maria won't forgive me. She won't get out of her bed. I force water down her, but I can't get her to eat anything or speak to me at all. Oh God, what can I do?" Mr. Garcia buried his hands in his face again, and Tony's father moved to stand beside him, showing support but not disturbing him. Tony's mother went to Maria's bedroom with her eyes full of anguish. "Maria, it's me, Miss Perez, Tony's mom." Angelica could barely see in the darkly shadowed bedroom. She felt her way around the walls until she found a light switch. The bright flash blinded her for a moment, and spots still hung before her eyes when she saw Maria lying on the bed, curled around a green stuffed bunny. The tattered toy had seen many years of love, and Maria clung to it. She was barely recognizable. The healthy young woman had withered away into a frail-looking child. Her bones jutted out at harsh angles, and her skin seemed stretched tightly over her gaunt frame. If not for the soft movement of her chest, Angelica would have thought the girl had already passed away. "Maria," Angelica said as she softly touched the teen's shoulder. Maria's eyes flickered open and they held a sea of suffering. Her pain was so raw, it radiated from her in waves crashing around Angelica. "Maria, please let me help you. Tony is here. He loves you and he worries about you. Let's get you feeling better and he can come visit with you for a while." The last sentence sparked something in Maria's eyes. "Tony?" she asked in a voice brittle from sorrow and disuse. "I'll bring him in to see you soon. First, let's get you a nice bath." Angelica could smell the urine, feces, and grime that coated the unwashed girl. The back of Maria's arms and legs were patterned with bed sores from filth and lack of movement. Her back was probably worse. Angelica had seen depression before, but nothing like this. Almost as if Maria's soul had already left this world, abandoning an empty carcass behind. Angelica went into the bathroom. It was dusty and dirty. She quickly cleaned the tub and started a warm bath. She found some bath salts that added a peaceful lavender scent. As she filled the tub, she cleaned enough space in the kitchen to make chamomile tea. Everyone could use some calming tonight. While she busied herself helping the only way she knew how, she heard George talking with Mr. Garcia. If this had happened last year, they could have paid for Alma's surgery, but right now they were behind on their bills and close to losing everything themselves. This was their last month to catch up on the WPO independent business tax, 80% on all revenue, a crushing responsibility during good times, but impossible with everything they were dealing with now. Someone at the school reported them to WPO for being behind on the children's lunch bill, and someone at the office reported them for paying wages a few days late. It wasn't their fault. WPO hadn't paid on Welltech's contract for 6 months. How could the WPO refuse to pay her husband's company for work that was already done and then punish him for not paying taxes to them? It made no sense. George owned and operated a call center that helped WPO connect citizens to needed services, reminded them of upcoming tax payments, and helped chase payments for WPO and other independent companies. They were all valued services, and Welltech had performed them superbly for the last 5 years. Why was there a problem now? It all seemed suspicious to Angelica, but who could they turn to for help? WPO controlled everything. Even independent companies like her husband's relied primarily on WPO contracts. No one could afford to stand up to them. During the early part of the leveling, many tried and were added to the piles of the dead in forgotten nations. Angelica added a large amount of honey to the cup of warm tea for Maria, hoping it would give her some energy. She found a box of coconut almond cookies in the pantry and put them on the tray for her and Maria to share. Maybe she could get the girl to have a few. She made a second tray of tea and cookies. "Tony?" Angelica called from the kitchen. "Yes, Mom." Tony walked in the kitchen next to her. "Take this tray for your father and Mr. Garcia. I made you a cup of tea as well. I'm running a bath for Maria. When she's a little refreshed, you can visit with her." Tony looked like he wanted to say something contrary, but he was a good child and knew better. He held back his words and took the tray into the living room. Angelica grabbed the tray for Maria and herself and headed towards the girls' room. When she entered, she noticed Maria was not on the bed and the bathroom door was closed. The water had been turned off. Maria, you should come have some tea before your bath," Angelica said while tapping on the bathroom door. It wasn't completely closed and the soft force was enough to push it open. Maria was lying face down in the bathtub, floating in the water with her clothes on. "George, help!" Angelica screamed, running over and pulling Maria out of the bathtub. She laid her gently on the floor and softly patted her cheek. Maria, please wake up." George, Mr. Garcia, and Tony squeezed into the bathroom. Mr. Garcia pushed Angelica out of the way and started CPR on Maria. With each breath from her father, Maria gained color until she was breathing on her own. "Thank you, God," Mr. Garcia exclaimed. He held his daughter close to him. "Please don't leave me, Maria. You're all I have left. Please forgive me." Maria opened her eyes and looked at her father. I'm tired, Papa. I want to be with Mama, Sophia, and Alma. It's horrible here. Please let me go. I can't. It's not right. The world needs you. I need you. Mr. Garcia pleaded with his remaining child, but she closed her eyes again, either unconscious or pretending to be, so the conversation would end. Mr. Garcia carried Maria back to bed. He turned and looked at the Perez family, who stood as silent and heartbroken witnesses. Please leave us alone. Don't call anymore and don't come back again, Mr. Garcia said sadly. You can't help us and may put yourselves in danger. The WPO is a greater evil than anyone realizes, and I know some of their secrets. Leave and don't talk about us to anyone. Pretend you never came here. Angelica removed her pearl rosary and walked over to Maria, laying it on the girl's open palm and closing her limp fingers around it. Angelica knelt next to the bed and prayed. George and Tony joined her. Feeling lost, Mr. Garcia joined them as well. Angelica had no idea what to do. She prayed God would show her. She prayed for Maria and her family. She prayed for her children and husband. She prayed for a world that had lost its way, a world that valued material wealth over human life, where children were systematically murdered in the name of good, where the WPO came before God, family, and your own life. No one she loved had the self-gratifying and merciless tendencies it took to survive in this brave new world. May God help them. Maria woke up to see her father praying at her bedside with Tony and his parents. He hadn't prayed since they lost her mother and baby Sophia. She had continued praying and trying to make right choices all these years like Mama taught her. But now it seemed as if she was unheard and forgotten by God. How could he take Alma and leave her here all alone? Tony looked up and saw Maria awake. He rushed over and hugged her tightly. Maria, I've been worried about you, he exclaimed, hugging her again. Miss Perez came over and hugged Maria next. Mija, don't scare us like that. We're here to help you and your family, however we can. Maybe Maria wasn't alone, but why couldn't Alma be here? Why couldn't God save her? It seemed God never saved anyone, not even Jesus. Maybe God couldn't. Maybe people who love God needed to save themselves and one another. She was exhausted and confused, but she felt love around her now, where even yesterday only feelings of misery and anger echoed. Angelica had to get back home to the children, and George needed to go to work. Welltech operated smoothly without him, but he had to be present in case there were any issues. Tony should go to school, but they decided to let him stay with Maria instead, only until her family was more stable. Losing a child rends a family apart like nothing else. Angelica couldn't imagine what she would do if anything happened to her children. When they arrived at the house, the kids were happily munching and already dressed for the day. No one would be late for school or daycare. Thank you so much, Harmony Kim. You're the best, Angelica said as she walked into the delicious-smelling kitchen. No problem. I love the kids. They're very good. Call me anytime. I'll take baby Javi and Lizette with me now. Harmony Kim answered, smiling. The beautiful, tiny woman was ageless. She ran a successful daycare, but was also the neighborhood emergency sitter. Even as mistrustful as people were of one another, everyone trusted Harmony Kim. She was from the time before WPO and somehow managed to weather all the tragedy as the same wonderful person she always was. Angelica hugged the woman gently, saying, "You were such a blessing." Harmony Kim smiled and cuddled baby Javier, replying, "No, I am blessed." She hugged Sergio goodbye while carrying the baby, then grabbed his diaper bag and Bale's overnight bag. She headed back home with her granddaughter and Angelica's 2 children in tow to await the arrival of her many other blessings. Angelica readied herself for work quickly. She felt sad and nervous. She couldn't shake a looming feeling of doom. She left for Welltech separately from George, so she could drop Sergio off at the elementary school. When she arrived at the school, she almost drove past it and went back home. Something didn't feel right. Instead, she pushed the uneasiness to the back of her mind. Have a good day. I love you. Angelica watched her son with trepidation as he exited the car. He smiled at her and waved goodbye, oblivious of her anxiety. She continued to Weltec with uneasiness, fighting to regain control of her thoughts again. She had seen many horrors during the leveling and afterwards. She vowed to never be a part of the prevalent evil, but somehow by standing aside and doing nothing about it, she was enabling the evil, supporting it through her inaction. What choice did she have? WPO infected every area of the earth and every aspect of human life. Defying them was a death sentence for her and everyone she loved. Many people from the barrio that she grew up in, including her brother, tried to stand against WPO, and they were all gone now. When she pulled into the rear parking area behind Weltec, she was mortified to discover a fleet of WPO vehicles. Some were officer patrol vehicles and others were vans used for transporting people to the camp. Even though Angelica was worried about George, she knew the children needed her help more than he did. She couldn't let the WPO get to them first. She turned her car and left without stopping. She couldn't drive rashly and attract attention, but she rushed back to Sergio's elementary school as quickly as the limits allowed. She was relieved that no WPO vehicles were at the school, at least not that she could see. She calmed herself before entering the school. It wouldn't go well if she aroused suspicion. She locked her vehicle and walked confidently into the school. The hallways were empty, with all the children tucked away in their classrooms, being unknowingly indoctrinated into WPO's society. How could she be trapped in this moment? Was there anything they could have done differently to change this? Angelica entered the office and greeted the secretary with a soft smile. "Hello, I'm here to pick up Sergio Perez. His father said he wasn't feeling well this morning, and I wouldn't want him to get the other children ill. I wouldn't have brought him at all, but I didn't know." "Sure, Miss Perez," the young man answered with an understanding smile. He turned and called into the intercom. "Sergio Perez, please come to the office. Sergio Perez, please come to the office." Sergio arrived at the school office minutes later. The 8-year-old looked shocked and elated to see his mother. He loved school, but he loved being home more. "Your dad told me you weren't feeling well, so I thought it'd be best if you came back home for today. You don't want your friends getting sick too." Angelica smiled sweetly and put her arm around his shoulders. "Yeah, Mom, I feel worse now. My stomach really hurts," Sergio said sadly. He was bright and an exceptionally good actor. Angelica was proud of him. He always went along with whatever was going on and rarely had any discontent over it. He was doing very well at feigning illness. The secretary gave Sergio a sympathetic smile as they left the office. Angelica needed to get to Hominy Kim's home. Tony should be safe with Mr. Garcia and Maria for now. When she arrived at the large Riverstone-decorated 3-story house, she could hear children singing and laughing. Angelica didn't think there was anyone better with children than Hominy Kim. She had 8 adult children, 12 grandchildren, and 27 great-grandchildren. She had more, but some were lost during the leveling. Still more of her family survived than any other Angelica knew. Half of her daycare was comprised of them. It made her daycare environment even more loving and close. Angelica was relieved that there were no WPO vehicles in the immediate area. She turned to look at Sergio and thought of having him wait in the car, but then decided to keep him with her. "Let's go grab the others," she told him as she opened the car door. "What's going on, Mom?" Sergio followed her to the front door, with a worried frown wrinkling his smooth young face. Angelica waited a few moments before responding. "I can't explain now, but our family is in trouble, and we need to get everyone together and leave here as quickly as possible. Relax and let me take care of everything." "Yes, Mom," Sergio replied with the wrinkled frown deepening. Angelica buzzed the entrance camera and Hominy Kim answered right away, looking concerned. "You're here early. Are you home for the day?" "Yes, Sergio wasn't feeling well. I went and got him from school. Since we're going to be at the house, I figured I'd come get Lizette and Javi." "You can leave Sergio here and go back to work, Angelica. I can take care of him for you. Some soup and a nap will work wonders," she replied. "Thank you so much, but I'm feeling a little unwell myself and want to rest for today. I'll just take the kids and we'll relax together." Angelica shifted her feet slightly. It was hard not to appear nervous. She could feel the time ticking against her. "Sure, do you want to come in while I get them ready?" Hamani Kim asked as she moved from the doorway into the house. Angelica wanted to scream no, but that wasn't reasonable and would terrify the older woman who was basically a saint and deserved much better. Instead, she simply smiled and gently nudged Sergio into the house and followed him. It only took moments for Hamani Kim to get the children ready, but it stretched forever to Angelica. Once they were on their way out, Hamani Kim put her hand on Angelica's shoulder and looked her in the eyes. "Whatever it is, I know people who can help. Don't be afraid to ask." Angelica put her hand on top of Hamani Kim's and squeezed gently. "Thank you so much. I may be back later if the kids get to be more than I can handle." Then Angelica moved away from her and out the door. As Angelica got the children situated for the quick drive home, she thought about turning back and taking the help offered by Hamani Kim, but she couldn't bring herself to put her old friend in danger. Many families depended on the sweet grandmother, and she was too valuable to risk. She decided to go home and pack. Maybe she would hear from George soon. WPO officers had George and all his employees lined up against the back wall of the office building. Some of the women were crying. Carlos was holding Janet. Usually the contact wouldn't be allowed in the workplace, but today was an unusual day. Some of the officers took statements from employees while others emptied the office of all paperwork, computers, and equipment. It was wrong on every level, but George knew better than to say anything about it. In the new world, only WPO elite owned anything, and sometimes they let other workers beneath them live well, but independent people like George were in a lower caste. George always thought his usefulness protected him, but now he could see how wrong he was. How did we let the world come to this, he wondered. George remembered the time before. There were struggles and inequality, but nothing like this. Back then, people raged against it and turned on one another, blaming one another, never realizing the true villains hid in the shadows, inciting the hate and violence, building the walls between people. When the leveling happened and humanity was at its breaking point, they walked in like saviors. If people had known the way it would all turn out, who the true tyrants were, they may have fought against them. But now it was too late. They owned the earth. "Mr. Perez, I'd like to take your statement." A WPO officer stood in front of George. It was strange because the man had a kind and noble face. George didn't expect that. "Yes, sir. What statement can I make for you?" "You are accused of hiding profits from WPO and refusing to pay your taxes. You have also been negligent in paying for your children's school meal credits and payments for employees' work. What is your answer to these accusations? You may answer later at a camp office, but if you give us the information we need now, we may be able to let you go on your own recognizance." George knew they would never let him go. They were going to take his business for their own. When WPO first stopped paying for his company's work, he had no idea why, but now he could see it all clearly. Hopefully they would spare his family. "Officer, I have never hidden profits. You have all my books, and WPO removes tax lists directly from my account. My largest contract is with WPO, and they have not paid us for our work in 6 months, and I had to cover the expenses of WPO's contract with my other smaller contracts. I ran out of resources, and I have nothing to pay taxes with. If WPO makes good on their debt, then there would be more than enough to cover any taxes and my other responsibilities that have been neglected because of this." "Heresy!" the reasonable-seeming officer shouted unreasonably. "The WPO has no debts. Debt destroyed the old world and we rebuke it. The officers at the camp will get the truth out of you." The WPO officer grabbed George, shackled his hands, and pulled him over to where the other officers had created a line of chained Welltech employees. George's entire staff was being taken into custody and transported to the camp. Night had fallen, and Angelica still hadn't heard from George. She was tempted to call him or his office, but she didn't want to draw attention to herself. She had already packed a few bags and loaded the car. She had no idea where they would go, but anywhere seemed safer than here. Lizette and Sergio were drawing at the kitchen table. They finally stopped asking Angelica questions when she snapped at them. She never lost her temper. It wasn't her way. The children knew whatever was happening was serious and to let their mother be. She sat on the couch, waiting for a sign to leave. Baby Javi was playing with the truck on the living room floor that popped balls out of a little hole on the top of its cab. For his birthday, they were struggling and only able to buy this one nice toy. The other armfuls of toys they brought home were inexpensive and only weathered the baby's rough play for a few days. She remembered how angrily Janet looked at them when they came out of the toy store, how envious. Angelica wanted to tell her that they were cheap trinkets and that the business was struggling, but what good would it do? The young woman was looking for reasons to be angry. She was probably the one that reported them for paying the employees late a few weeks ago. Since then, they had been selling any assets they had left to make payroll on time. They should have left months ago, before their accounts were completely empty. Instead, they trusted that the WPO would pay them. They had worked for the government for many years with no issues. Angelica had repeatedly sent invoices and made calls, always receiving the same answer. Payment was on its way. But the payment never came, and now her family would pay for it. She could feel it in her bones. Angelica started to weep. Baby Javi crawled into her lap, and the other children sat down, one on each side of her, snuggling close until they all fell asleep. Angelica's phone was ringing. She opened her eyes and realized her mistake. She had waited too long. They were coming for her family. Javi started crying and she comforted him while tenderly shaking Sergio and Lizette awake. "We have to go now, babies. Let's go for a ride," she said as she led the children to the car. When the garage door opened, she thought she could see a WPO patrol vehicle across the street, but it was dark and she was afraid. Her eyes could easily be painting nightmares in the shadows. She drove out and headed east. They were as far west as possible, right on the ocean's edge, so east seemed a reasonable choice. When she was safely on the highway, miles away from her home, she got the courage to look at her phone. It was Holly, Janet's friend. She had only spoken to the woman a few times, but she seemed like a good person. She decided to call her back. Maybe she knew something. "Hello," a pleasant voice answered. "Holly, this is Miss Perez from Welltech. I saw a missed call from you." "Yes, Janet called me this morning saying all of Welltech was being taken into custody. We haven't talked in almost 2 months and definitely aren't friends anymore, but she was so terrified that she reached out to me. I haven't heard from her since and she doesn't answer her phone. Do you know what's going on?" Angelica wasn't sure what to do. Even if Holly were trustworthy, sharing too much information could endanger her. "No, I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe some sort of misunderstanding. Holly, if you two aren't friends anymore, maybe she decided not to talk to you again. Whatever's going on, it's best not to get involved," Angelica said in her most persuasive voice. She needed Holly to catch the unspoken warning. "Okay, Miss Perez, I understand. Thank you for your time," Holly replied. Angelica could hear a faint trace of fear in her voice. She understood the implied warning. "You're welcome, Holly. God bless you and keep you safe," Angelica answered, then ended the call. Angelica had nowhere to go. The children were sleeping now, but what would she do when they were hungry or needed a bathroom? She drove aimlessly until she arrived at her old church. It had been closed for many years. Even though the WPO said it accepted spirituality as an important aspect of every citizen's life, they also felt organized religion offered nothing but archaic practices that brutalized and segregated people. They preferred citizens follow the WPO guide to personal enlightenment and achievement, but if someone practiced a religion from the world before, they could only do so in the privacy of their own home. The WPO insisted places of worship were offensive and breeding grounds for bigotry. Angelica could never see that viewpoint as accurate. Human hearts were the breeding ground for hatred and bigotry. They carried it with them everywhere they went, infecting whatever they touched. We could tear down the world around us, but nothing would be better until we accepted the fault lies in us all and mended the damage from within. Angelica made her choice and pulled the car around to the back of the church. She found a large old shed that would fit the car. It was unlocked. She pulled the car inside, then woke the children and placed her finger over her lips to remind them to be quiet. Her old barrio was abandoned during the leveling, but it was always good to be cautious. She didn't see any DigiGuards in the area. The WPO probably felt there was nothing here worth protecting. The back door of the church was also unlocked. It led to a dirty kitchen. The thick layer of dust on the floor was undisturbed until she and the children walked on it. They entered the nave, and hundreds of bodies filled the pews and sprawled all over the floor, even to the sanctuary. They were all little more than bones, so it must have been from the time of the leveling. Angelica and the children should be horrified, but somehow they weren't. These people all passed together, loving and supporting one another, waiting for God to take them home. They went to the first row and found a space that was almost empty, except for a mother holding her child. Angelica and her children joined them. Confused and lost, Angelica prayed, and Sergio joined her. Lizette joined in as well, the best she could. Baby Javi cooed and wiggled, content in the musty old church. The family grew tired again. The day was long, and stress added to their exhaustion. Angelica carried Javi and led the other children to the sacristy. There was less dust and large cloths probably used for altars once. There were no corpses here. She made them a bed of red and gold cloths, then lay down with her children. She held Javi in her arms and they fell asleep once again. "Come out now!" a voice shouted from outside the sacristy. Angelica woke startled and Javi began to cry. She quickly covered his mouth. She felt horrible doing it, but his cries might escalate the situation. The baby struggled against her, terrified and confused. "Miss Perez, we know you are in there. We have orders to remove your children from your care and take you to the camp. If you cooperate, you may be released later and reunited with them again. If you resist, we are authorized to use extreme force. Please come out so we can help you." "Give me a few minutes, please. I'm begging you. Let me say goodbye to my babies," Angelica yelled back to the voice. She could hear an army of feet stomping around in the next room. There was no escape. "Okay, Miss Perez, you can have 10 minutes, then we are coming in if you don't come out." Angelica kissed the top of Javi's head tenderly, then covered his nose as well as his mouth, singing softly into his ear. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away." She sang the line several times before his body stopped fighting against her. Sergio and Lizette watched her in uncertainty and fear. Angelica never raised a hand to them. It ripped her apart to see the fright in their eyes, but it was the only way to save them. She knew this might happen and had grabbed a knife earlier when they walked through the kitchen. Angelica held Lizette close to her and said, "I'm sorry, honey. I love you with all my heart." Then she pulled the knife across the little girl's throat, and blood poured out all over her hands, Lizette, and the floor. More blood than Angelica had ever seen. She turned to Sergio and he screamed, "Please, baby, trust me. This is the only way," Angelica said, reaching for him. Sergio screamed again and ran past his mother, out of the sacristy, screaming continually. Angelica chased after him with the knife raised to strike. As soon as they ran out of the nave, one of the WP officers yelled, "She has a weapon! Front row officers, fire at will!" A storm of bullets crashed into Sergio, making the boy dance and twitch wildly. He unknowingly shielded his mother from most of the bullets, but several of them exploded through her chest, neck, and head that were exposed above his small body. Sergio fell first, and Angelica collapsed on top of him. The WPO officers brought in bags to clean up the scene. Whenever a citizen ran, they always prepared for this outcome. It was the way things ended for most everyone that dared flee their responsibilities to the WPO. "Captain Stokes, the baby is still alive," Officer Jamar Williams called from the other room. Officer Williams was a young man, recently graduated from training and new to this department. Captain Iva Stokes entered the sacristy and saw Officer Williams standing completely still while holding the limp child and staring down at it. The massive, deep sepia-toned man looked like a giant holding a broken doll. The baby's chest was faintly moving with each little breath it took. Its tiny body was covered in its sister's blood. Officer Williams, get the baby out to an emergency medical vehicle immediately. There's no time for standing around. She knew that the other officer was unexperienced and in shock. She wondered if he would be able to last in this unit. Citizen recovery was the hardest unit to handle in the Citizen Control Department of WPO. You needed to forgo your humanity if you wanted to succeed at these missions. Thankfully, Captain Stokes didn't have any humanity left to worry about. She followed Officer Williams out of the church and over to the WPO emergency medical van. A team was already waiting with doors open in case any survivors were found. Officer Williams handed the baby to the nearest medic and backed away, unsure what to do. The medical team took the baby into the vehicle and began working on it immediately. Within minutes, the baby was stabilized on oxygen monitors. "Take the baby to the clinic," Captain Stokes informed the medics. Officer Williams stared at her in shock. What did he think happened to babies without families? No, she really didn't think Officer Williams was going to survive this department. He just didn't have what it takes. So that was chapter 7 of The Clinic. We're starting to see how terrified people are of the WPO and what tyrants they're turning out to be. Things are only going to get more horrifying from here on out, so I hope you can join me again next week. Until then, I hope these stories keep you up at night.